G'day, I am Twig and welcome to this week's King of the Hill special, taken from the preceding week's King of the Hill's closest game. If you want to be part of the King of the Hill experience, head over to the AllReasonNoLogic Discord, link in the description below. We send out an announcement weekly prior to the upcoming match, and it includes players from a range of low rank, low skill, all the way up to the best of the best that you see in this game, the best players in the world. And they join us on a weekly basis to fight it out in a range of fun maps between the Kings and Peasants. Speaking of royalty, I'm joined by our co-commentator Pradith to break down this week's fun.
I swear I actually have a family crest. I swear. It certainly isn't fake and made up. But, yep, joining us. But the actual royalty of this game is Pierre, Duffy, and Dudge and DJ?
Jar. I think it's Jar, maybe. DJAH.
Well,
Jar
these guys are starting us off as the Kings on the Hill. Duffy and DJ and Jar are reasonably regular to this King of the Hill stream, but Pierre, I believe this might be his first time on the Hill. So we'll see whether their combined might can withstand the horde of 13 peasants. Somewhere down below, in fact just over here to the right side of the map, is Tank Tom, myself, and Twig all huddled up in a corner. Now, you might think that that's going to be a very powerful start with the three of us. Yep, we'll see. I swear we have an impact on this game.
So just for the rules, everyone, King of the Hill rules. So rule number 1 there is a 10-minute no rush timer, and that second tier that you see in the map that I'm just currently highlighting and scribbling on through here, no one is allowed onto that tier for the first 10 minutes. So the Kings will naturally defend on this location here, and then the Peasants will be just defending on these lower ramps. The second rule is no structures at any point in the game, including the nukes, the genos, anything like that, are allowed to hit the base starting positions of any other players. So you cannot fire a Juno up onto the top of the hill, similarly to the bottom tier, but you can put it on that mid tier. Then also there's a few small tricky rules. Obviously as Kings with their bonus, they can't use any sort of reclaim hack. And then we do allow co-op eco, but we ask that players don't abuse it too much. So usually just co-op eco for the Peasants between 2 people rather than the 3. As soon as you've got 3 people building on 1 eco, it's like having another king down the bottom of the hill. So we go easy on that one. Finally, the most important rule of them all is have some fun.
The other bits that were missed out is that there's a 10-minute no rush, so the Kings and the Peasants both have a bit of time to get set up. As well as... Nope, I think that's about it. I'm just seeing I think you might have gotten rid of it, but there was a noughts and crosses game going on by some of the spectators. Kind of like that, the first 10 minutes of the game. They're certainly interesting to us because we play both the King's position and the Peasant's position. Very good to see what other players are doing and learn from it. But when you're a couple games in for the night, you definitely are waiting for that 10-minute action moment.
We've just had going into a com bomb just to get that medal in, to get T2 up, and just T2 already finished in just 3 minutes and a half.
One thing to see from that is that it's actually in range of the build tower, which means that there's a decent chance that it will get consumed by accident, even if it wasn't intentional. Something else to note is the Kings have a plus 50% bonus for this map, and that means that the reclaim that comes off of that comm is 50% higher than than regular. So every source of income as a king is increased by 50%. It's what allows the 3 to potentially fight the 13.
And we were going 45% on throne previously, but we decided that the Kings, I think, hadn't won for about 3-4 weeks consistently on this map, so we've upped it to 50%. Now that this has been going on a while, there's a bit of a niche from the Peasants, so the Peasants getting a lot of power, especially with the eco advantage. You can see they're about 70-80% ahead at this stage of the game. That's just because there's 11 of them down there on the lower of the map. Sorry, 13 of them.
The general concept is simply that the Kings don't have to spend as much on their production, on getting set up, because there are fewer of them. So when you look at the Peasants, there'll be potentially 13 labs, 13 sets of power, 13 sets of builders, all that sort of thing. So even though it certainly starts looking in the favor of the peasants, once you ramp up to your conversion eco, the kings really can pull ahead, because take an Aphis, for example. Not only does it produce 50% more power, which means that you need an additional 2 converters, the converters produce an additional 50% metal, so they're producing the 15 instead of the 10, so you go from 40 all the way up to, don't make me do maths on stream, 90 per Aphis, which is a crazy difference just from a 50% bonus.
Just looking down at the communism eco that we were talking about, you can see I had a bit of a easy game. All I had to do was use a constructor and my commander to just build eco, and I was handing all of that over to Praedyth, so that we could get a strong enough eco to get plenty of T2 out by that 10-minute mark, handing over that geothermal, and then I believe I go into some titles which bring in some good energy in this match as well.
I'd like to point out the reason that you decided to go with this strategy is because, and I quote, "I am Twig and I have a baby now, which means I can't play properly."
That is my life now.
Direct quote, Twig 2025.
It is like that now. Unfortunately, that's one of the few sacrifices that I don't mind making for the new family.
And it's definitely going to be good for me, because it means that when the combat starts kicking up, I can just start throwing units at Twig and not pay attention.
What I do love now is that join as command that's been introduced into the game. So you can, as long as you haven't been spectating a game already, you can join into it using exclamation mark, join as, space, and then the player name that you want to join as. And yeah, then you can essentially have 2 players controlling just 1 player army. Works well for having one doing the eco and one doing the army.
Also helps with how popular some of these lobbies get, because it means that one of us can potentially step out and give our slot away and still participate in the game just by assisting another member.
Duffy working on his Aphis. It should be up in about 60 seconds. Struggling actually with energy.
I can't believe he's getting an Aphis.
I know what he's done here. There were definitely some solars like through this area here, and he's reclaimed them and then built some more solars over here later in the game, so a little bit sneaky. I mean, of course, when you build T1, you can build solars and build wind and reclaim it like you usually do to fund T2, but maybe abusing the rules a little bit. I mean, definitely not breaking them, but just Duffy's known to always find the little niches of getting that economic advantage out of the percentage.
He's also been funded by the orange player. If you look at what the orange player has, it's actually very sparse.
Yeah.
So I think they're just working together very well to get this Aphis done. I don't think I've even tried for an Aphis as in the king spot, but
no, I usually try and get 2 fusions up by the 10-minute mark, and that's usually enough to fund both T2 and a bit of spam. When I play this position, I like to go Armada typically and send, I think, 6 factories, T1 factories worth of ticks all the way around that second tier, just to stop any spiders coming up the hill, because that's usually the initial threat. You can see Duffy building some twin guards in this, what do we call it, this beacon of a hill out to the side, and similarly down here where you can see a bunch of beamers coming out of orange, and then yellow going for LLTs but with a bunch of units just to stop any spiders coming up the hill, because those spiders, if you can get T2 on the lower level, definitely make for a very aggressive opponent coming from the peasants. T2 coming up, most players around the peasants. Looking around the map, we got pretty much T2 out of all Geo players. Maybe apart from the purple one over this side of the map. And we got 1 minute left, so army is being formed by all players.
Having a quick look around at all the different entry points for the peasants, looks like we're getting a spider push out of Winera. The recluses are a wildly good unit for this, and as Twig said, those beamers up there to try and defend it, but all he has to do is find one gap. Coming from the AllReasonNoLogic guys, looks like a bit of a fiend push. Well, not looks like, it is. And then elsewhere around the map, it's actually reasonably sparse for units. There's some T1 coming up from the top side of the map, but Of the 5 entrances to the second tier, it only looks like 3 of them plus 1 cliff is actually going to get some go time at the 10-minute mark, which is a big risk. The peasant favored matches have always been from aggression, as compared to the king's matches, which is usually comes from either the king's breaking players very quickly, or from the kings managing to survive long enough to scale that eco.
And we've just passed the 10-minute mark, and do we have much vision from the top of the hill? We don't, really. And Grump, Duffy choosing to go with a bunch of Jaguars down that left-hand side, and I think they're going to be quite a good unit to take out all these pawns. These pawns are just going to chain react those lightning bolts. You can see splash damaging between the units from one to the next.
Good call from Atlasfield, pulling those back and off to the side as quickly as he can. They weren't going to get any real damage done. Getting his comm in place. The comm, I think, is going to go down. There's a lot of Jaguars, but does manage to do a lot of damage to them. Blunts that push for the start of the game, which is a good sacrifice for a comm. Yellow is pushing down into purple at the moment. And it looks like just a pawn-on-pawn massacre.
We've not done too much with those fiends. Good job pulling them back, knowing that they're not going to push through that many twin guards. That is a lot of towers, but the real action is going on now with a bunch of ticks getting through. Snipers and pawns defending the... is that teal? Cyan base? And we've got a geothermal power plant that is probably the #1 target there, going off like a nuclear bomb if that's hit. And now we've got another... is that 14? Yep, 14 Jaguars coming down, and that should be enough to pop that geo. I don't know if it's going to be enough to take out the whole base, though. We do have some snipers coming out, and some welders will shut these down with that defender's bonus.
The Recluse actually managed to get up onto Orange's base and destroy his fusion reactor, which is currently being reclaimed at the moment, so no resurrection, just metal back into the bank.
Of course, I go and look over there just as the geo pops. I'm going to have to go and insert that into the post. Oh well, happens every cast.
But yeah, so this is actually quite an even match. We've got the Kings managing to break one of the peasant players, and we've got the peasants that have managed to halt one of the King's players. And this is the sort of game that can go either way at this point, because the Kings still have enough to deal damage, and the peasants have enough to deal damage. So good little start for both sides.
Nicely done by these welders to take out those Jags that push north, shutting that down quite quickly.
And that's one of the things when a base falls next to you, you always have to be ready to put units in the way, because as soon as they fall, they're either going to go left or they're going to go right, so 50-50 chance of running into you.
Looking down at the pots, that's the green player's tactics. He's using some arbiters to shoot up over the hill. Very common tactic here. You can see they're hitting these beamers, but the beamers being healed by a number of these construction turrets.
Definitely using the scouting information from the Recluses in order to take out the defenses and potentially get more through in the future. We see just one hiding around the corner, but if there's no defenses, one can do a lot of damage. You probably just heard the battle paused and battle unpaused sounds. That was because of a relatively new player to the game type trying to build defenses on the mid ground that would be capable of hitting the red base. So that was just promptly removed, which is a very good thing about this community, is that everyone, they might make mistakes from now and then, but everyone's very happy to work with everyone to make the game fun.
Nicely done by JJ King on the left hand top side here, bringing these welders down to shut these Jaguars that were just about to get through and take out the blue base from C3 8. So 8 or B0.
Got to work together in this game mode. The peasants only stand a chance if they help each other.
Quick check back on the eco. A second AF is coming up for Duffy. I wouldn't be surprised if we see T3 after that. Definitely with that 50% bonus is enough to get a T3 factory up and going. We've got a bulwark up as well, taking out those Sheldons if they get too close that we're trying to get there. Very well defended on the right hand side. Quite well defended on all sides apart from the north, actually, where we've just got some LLTs, and those exploiters aren't even... Sorry, these extractors aren't even exploiters, so that's the place to push, but we don't know it as peasants.
And looking at red pushing out with those jaguars again, this is the moment that I discovered that fiends are not very good into jaguars, and that left my Sheldons well and truly exposed. And this is the start of a very hard fight for myself, Twig, and Tank Tom, as we are woefully unprepared for these jaguars and anything that comes afterwards.
Once again, that Geo is going to be the prime target here. Got a little Spectre out as a last resort, which should be enough to shut these down if they come this way, but they're not going to. Tank Tom taking his commander there. Maybe getting a D-gun off. Split in the middle. Oh, no.
Oof. Oh, no. And that's eco down, but it looks like the ticks might be able to clean this up. But Tank Tom building his wind in such a way that they do chain react. Should... Definitely something worth noting, that even if you can build wind 3 wide, it's probably not worth it.
These Arbiters doing some work on Orange base, struggling to defend here now. Orange moving that Jar, moving the APHIS into the inside of the map there. Jaguar push up through the defences, not going to make it through.
Have you seen the Fat Boy location? Just inside that cliff, popping off into the defences. That's great. What a good little spot.
Oh, I haven't seen it. Oh, there it is. Yeah, nicely done.
A good little spot.
We've got another push from Recluse coming up and taking out some of these beamers. How do they go against...
Every little bit of damage helps significantly with keeping the Kings in check, because the Kings only have so much micro, and they only have so much production capability. So pulling units to defend can be massive, because it means that they're not somewhere else that they might need to be. And though that being said, looks like Duffy's managed to get T3 rolling, so we're starting to see some Karganeths beginning to roll out. Karganeths are a huge threat on this map. They're able to pop down the cliffs and attack the peasants in places they wouldn't otherwise expect. They're great at dealing with spam, and they're great at dealing with just about everything.
Almost another snub of the same Geo that we saw at the start of the match, getting down to 15%, but nicely cleaned up with a T2 defense. No, sorry, that was all T1. Bunch of thugs.
Bunch of thugs cleaning that one up, and that's actually very... Thugs are a very interesting unit. They are a bit on the expensive side, but when you need them, when you need to deal with a limited amount of T2, they can actually tank and damage in a decent fashion.
On the left-hand side, we've got a bunch of Recluses, 14 of them from B-Bomb, the Lavender player. About to come up this hill and give Yellow a nice surprise. These LLTs are going to be able to stop them to some degree, but not enough to stop that build power, and I reckon those fusions will go. I'd be surprised if he gets to the APHIS with those. But you got the units, use them. You can see another Dragon Claw coming up. Yeah, build power, then converters, then fusions.
And that Fat Boy has just been taken out by a push out of Fiends. Sad to see him go, but he certainly did his job for a while. And it looks like the spiders are starting to track their way on up and in. They're just hanging out at the top of the cliff. Hopefully they go in. We see B-Bomb's cursor right there. He's ready to tip them over the edge. He's just trying to control them, get that scouting information, and go, go, go. Hounds are now in position for them, and we'll see how much damage he gets done. It does look like he's hit the build power, so even if this attack fails, I'd say taking out that much build power is worthwhile. Doesn't quite get the T2 lab, but still, the T2 lab can barely produce with all that build power taken out.
King's getting surrounded quite heavily on the northern side there. We've got a bunch of welders. Should be able to stop any spam coming down. Welder's really good for these King of the Hill games.
They're really tanky, and they're fantastic at dealing with a lot of the units that tend to break through. The pawns, the ticks, the grunts, things along those lines. They even match reasonably well against Fiends and Jaguars. So if you're going to build a unit that you don't need to be offensive with, and that you're not worried about being kited by, or kited with, the Welder fantastically strong. They do take power to to utilize, so you do have to bear that in mind. Kagi's pushing over that top cliff and absolutely decimating the defenders there, and it looks like reasonably open season heading down towards the blue player, trying to get a pulsar up online, but great D-guns out of the comm, cleaning up a couple of those, and I believe that was a spybot that managed to EMP them.
It was.
Yeah,
This
and
comm about
that
to
gives
come
it
back
time
for
for one
seconds.
fiend to take it out. Oh, that was close timing. And the comm gets the last two. But the pulsar is taken down, so
Over in our
the
lane,
defense
this is where I
still-
started to panic. I saw a
Ooh.
bunch of Shivas pulled, and we definitely didn't have the composition to deal with these.
Yeah, this was unexpected. And while this was happening, I just spent a whole bunch of money on upping our eco. We just picked up 4 fusions.
Micro not done well between us. I think I had to be quiet in game. Managed to get a spybot off on a bunch of those Shivas, but this is where when you got a couple people controlling army, I needed to shout louder, but I'd get slapped by my wife if I did.
You did not need to shout louder. All I could hear was, they're EMP'd, they're EMP'd, I'm EMPing them, they're EMP'd. And I'm like, that's awesome, I'm not there.
The ticks being pulled all at once, and they will chain react between themselves with that splash damage of the plasma bullets. So you want to spread these out a lot more. And what's usually better if you just put continuous line of ticks going in, just to keep the distraction rather than bunch them up, because they do go down just quite quickly at this stage of the game.
So the fact that all of the Shivas were targeting other things has allowed this group to get in and around them. The amount of damage ticks do over time, it's actually crazy. In fact, we've Tank Tom and I did a test a while back to see whether a Razorback's worth of in metal worth of ticks was able to kill a Razorback, and as it turns out, yes it is. And it gets worse. If you have 10 Razorbacks and 10 Razorbacks metal worth of ticks, the ticks win even harder. So that's just something to note. Ticks
Yellow
are
base
good.
almost killed by some T2 at Aphis getting down.
And look, we've got a rezzed Karganeth heading up into the top of Duffy's base, and it's managing to take out some of the defenses. It's managed to get on up and destroy a lot of the stuff close to the edge, and it does look like it may be able to punch through, though there does seem to be enough wardens, and now that the ticks are here, it's not going to. But great use of a resurrected unit from the blue player, not having the units of his own to get in there, manages to find a way through rezzing. Speaking of which, that's what's happening in front of myself and Twig's area. Both of us are looking to get these Shivas for ourselves.
And you can't beat them, join them.
More spiders heading up into the orange area. This time they are termites and not recluses. Termites are a little bit tankier than recluses, but they don't have the ambush ability that the recluse does, popping up and dropping those missiles off. Unfortunately, not a lot of damage done. But speaking of recluses, there are some purple recluses that are potentially going to head up into Yellow's base, but with these Dragon Claws and LLTs, they should not be overly effective.
Things doing really well to hold this off and keep up with the micro. Just a quick look at that. We can see Duffy up there, 84 APM. It's huge.
And just a quick look at the overall resources. You can actually see that the blue team is still actually out ecoing the Kings at the moment by about 30%, which considering everything going on, that is quite. Well, Duffy is actually scaling his eco quite well, so we'll see whether or not they manage to push back through. One of the things that the Kings really need is to break Peasant spaces. If you have a look up at the top at B-Bomb space, one of the players that was broken, they have actually managed to get back into the game, so the damage was not permanent.
Putting those T2 walls around this geo so it doesn't fall again.
I really need to get into the habit of doing that, but I never will. So if anyone works out they're playing against me in this, just remember I won't have walls around my geo. Just a hot tip.
Nice screenshot there of the demons walking down into our base. This is a little bit more of a painful push than the Shivas.
But as you can see, Twig has control of 7, yes, 7 Spectres, and only one of them needs to get in. Unfortunately, with so many players' units coming in, there's never a spot where the demons stop firing. So very, very small chance for EMPs, because a lot of them just being taken out, though 2 of them do manage to get some EMPs onto them, and that is a cleanup and the ability for us to get more T3 units without a T3 lab.
Now some pains coming through from the form of vanguards on the south.
Yeah, once the vanguards start getting out and attacking the top, it is suddenly becomes a much harder affair. You need shields if you want to defend that. This has been quite a brutal fight for the orange player, going up against just continuous harassment from the green player, whether it's spiders, vanguards, arbiters. It's just been constant fire into that area, not ever letting him recover from that initial bit of damage.
The way to deal with this is get that early spam down the bottom, because you could see the green players moved up to this location quite early. And it is very short distance between this ramp here and that cliff face, so you just want to make sure you secure that as a king to make sure that the area is not abused, which has happened all game.
Yeah, defending from the high ground is usually a good strategy, but when there's long-range artillery, particularly those arbiters, you really do have to find a way to defend from the low ground as well. I've seen you do this before, where you end up getting tick spam that just runs the circle and just keeps that area clear and at least gives you scouting information.
We have, of course, 2 pushes happening at the same time right now. We've got Kargis on the right-hand side and then a ton of recruiters coming out and taking out a base by the looks on the left-hand side.
Great job from the yellow player identifying that there's a big gap. Unfortunately, the pawn's managing to react fast enough, but still, that's a lot of damage running into that blue player. And if even just a couple of those recluses keep pushing on through, that's going to be huge. Looking up at the Kargis, these guys, the ones that tried to head towards the green base, have been taken out. But Tank Tom's going to have to get some good D-guns in if he wants to save his fusion pack, though his comm is in the right place to do it, and he does manage to get him. Even still, a couple seconds, and that actually would have been his fusion pack down.
And meanwhile, we've seen the main push of the game coming up through that southern area where we had all those Razorbacks and Vanguards, and we're just targeting that build power, and now an APHIS, if this pops, that's game over.
That is what I'm going to say is the game-winning move right there. Green just never giving orange time to be able to defend on his side, and then getting all the way up to those T3 Marauders and just punching on through. Great job by the Peasants, and a very, very rough game for the Kings. They certainly had a couple of those pushes going early, but some clutch defenses, some clutch D-guns managed to do absolute wonders for the Peasants. In particular, the I believe it was the blue player or B-bombs initial defense from the Jaguars. That one comm was responsible for about 20 Jaguar kills, and then again in a couple of other areas. So great defending and great offense out of the Peasants.
And nicely played by the Kings as well, putting out a lot of damage there. You can see the damage dealt and the damage received between the teams is pretty similar.
Even. Yeah.
So very close game, this one going for almost half an hour. Usually we quite often see these games end in about 20 minutes. So nicely played by the Kings, unfortunately not getting the win there. As soon as that one weakness is found, that's when the game ends for the Kings. Whereas if the Kings do manage to push down into the Peasants, it does take quite some time for them to push around the whole map. So that's where their disadvantage is seen. Quick look at the graphs there, just for your viewing pause. At any time you're going to see, you can see how much metal Duffy really came across at the start of the game, similar to the energy throughout the whole game, well above everyone else. And also, wow, damage, just flogging everyone there. Duffy been in these games a few times, quite experienced and very good player at the game. We hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure you jump in these games with us. It's getting quite fun every week to see new faces. Join the Discord and hit that subscribe button down there if you enjoyed this replay as well. We do very much appreciate when you do so.
Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Bye.